All right, it's Wednesday night, so time for the Fantasy Football Podcast. Week 9 in the books, looking towards Week 10. It was pretty eventful this week. We saw some real separation in the wild card chase and some interesting developments, some shakeups at the top of the power rankings this week. But we'll start with the waivers and trades. Nothing really too big. There's only one trade. Plotzker got Miles Austin from Ariel for Percy Harvin. This was strictly a playoff move for Plotzker. Austin obviously is going to miss a couple of weeks, but will be coming back towards the tail end. Cowboys have a pretty good schedule in the playoffs, so good investment for Plotzker. Plotzker also had an interesting waiver move. He spent $1 on Blaine Gabbert. I'm glad that I can say I'm not the only retard who put stock in Blaine for this season. So, obviously he'll never see the light of day, but good luck with all that, Plotzker. All right, getting to the power rankings. Start at the back. Number 12, Ariel. Ariel beat Ted this past week. He put up a lowly 85 points, but still managed to get past Ted. So that's something to be proud of. But more importantly, Ariel did lose to Deutsch. That was sort of a early clown bowl. I think they still play each other again. But losing this weekend is certainly not a good thing. Might be time for Ariel to start investigating kosher face paint. All right, number 11, Brian Deutsch. He did himself a serious favor in beating Ariel this past weekend, as I just mentioned. He's 2 games up in the clown race, and he has a point differential of almost 120 points. So he's in pretty good shape to avoid the clown suit. But, a Week 13 showdown between the two could have some serious implications. In at number 10, Ben Boris. Ben, as he said in his OI standings email this past week, what a liberating feeling it is knowing that your fantasy season is over. Ben got absolutely crushed by Bootsy and Plotzker last week. He got nothing from Marcus Colston. He got less than nothing from Deshaun Jackson. Ben does have a nice keeper in James Starks, pretty much in rebuilding mode. Number 9, I put myself. I unfortunately... things have sort of fallen apart for me. I last week had maybe a outside chance at making some wild card noise, but going 0-2 this past week certainly did me no favor. So to quote Morpheus from The Matrix, I have dreamed a dream, but now that dream is gone from me. Fuck you, Sam Bradford and Felix Jones. Number 8. Justin, the kid himself. Justin beat me this past week, so I will refrain from talking too much shit about his team for just maybe the week. Congratulations, Justin, on having confidence in Joseph Adai, even though he didn't play. That's very impressive that you could start him and still go 1-1 on the weekend. Number 7, John Krause, going 0-2 this past weekend, dealt a serious blow to Krause's season. He was playing Oaks and Bootsy, 2 serious wildcard contenders. He had a serious chance to throw his hat in the ring, but ended up getting pretty poor performances from Phil and Chris Obanaya, and Ryan Fitzpatrick had his worst game of the season. The injuries to Hakeem Nicks and Darren McFadden are really serious problems for Krause. Nicks looks like he might be back sooner rather than later, but McFadden, they play early this week. Looks like he's probably going to miss another game. Number 6, Billy. Billy has won his last 6 matchups in a row. He's still a threat to pull down the wild card. He may have dug himself into a pretty deep hole to start the season by losing 6 of his first 8, but he seems like he's definitely on the right track. He's just going to need a little bit more out of Carson Palmer to stay alive. Palmer played pretty well against a average defense in Denver, but just turned it over way too many times. With 3 picks that's more than a touchdown, so that's losing a lot of points there. Number 5 and number 4, for the first time in Power Rankings history, we have a tie. It's called a tie for 4th place. Oaks and Bootsy. It really is a true tie. Both teams are 10-8. They have yet to play each other, so there's no head-to-head determination. And they're separated by 0.3 of a point in the total point standing. So the argument could be made that Bootsy has overcome more as teams have scored more points against him. But I think a lot of that was Ted's popcorn muscle points earlier in the season. Both teams went an impressive 2-0 last week, similar to each other. Both put up over 130 points. They do play each other twice in the next 4 weeks, so if one of them can manage a sweep, they'll basically be in the wild card driver's seat. But for the time being in the power rankings, Oaks and Bootsy tied for 4th place. 3rd place, Denenberg. Denenberg has very quietly won 8 of his last 10 matchups. He's not feeling too much heat from Justin in the division. Justin's record would indicate that he's hot on the chase, but it's not something that's overly concerning to Denenberg, I wouldn't imagine. He did get crushed by Oaks this past weekend, but he should be encouraged with Frank Gore's continued success and the new Big Ben Wallace combo. Get it? Big Ben Wallace. The story for D is really not the regular season anymore, as it looks like he's in pretty good shape to clinch his division. It's the playoffs. It's going to depend, who gets in and what the matchups are. All right, here's where the real action happens. Number 2, Ted Rifkin. For the first time this year, Ted is out of the number 1 spot. Ted has lost 3 of his last 4 matchups, including a head-to-head matchup with Plotzker. Ted has more total points than Plotzker does, but a lot of those are front-loaded. Ted averaged over 145 points per week for the first 5 weeks of the season. But since week 5, since then, he's only averaged 96 points a week. So things are really sort of collapsing for Ted. Ted's running back situation is just disgusting. Javid Best, he might be out for the season. Who knows what his deal is? And beyond that, Maurice Morris is terrible. D'Angelo Williams is a big-time disappointment. Kevin Falk is just, beyond worthless. And Ben Tate actually had a sneaky good game sort of out of nowhere. Ted had to start him. I don't think Ted even saw that coming. But Tate, even though he's probably the best backup running back in football, he's still a backup. I would say Ted, he'll probably still hold on to win the division. But, he's no longer the best team in the league. Far from it, frankly. Number 1. He's finally done it. Congratulations to Jason Plotzker for unseating Rifkin and taking over the number 1 spot. If you take away his awful bye week affected week 7 performance, Plotzker has won 13 of his last 14 matchups. His only loss in that group was to Denenberg by 0.7 of a point. His Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson combo, it really can't be stopped. I mean, if they're not good for a touchdown every week, they're good for some big-time yardage. So LaShawn McCoy is, I think, the best back in fantasy football. Eli's having a fantastic season, and Mario Manningham is sort of picking up speed. So he's got great quarterback-receiver combos. He's got 2 of them. Plotzker really, he's strong at every position. I would say at this point he's the clear-cut championship favorite. He's got a great team. All right, and now, just talking about Plotzker, he obviously has the division on lockdown, Denenberg as well. Despite Ted's recent stumble, I would say that Ted's not really doing anything to indicate that he won't make the playoffs. But the wild card race really took shape, so it's going to be that 4th team that gets in. Ben and I basically bowed out with 0-2 performances, while Justin and Kraus somehow managed to stay alive. Bootsy, Billy, and Oaks really state their claims as the true contenders. So here's how I see the updated wild card odds. 10-8. Bootsy, he presents a pretty interesting case. His team is solid. He continues to get solid production from Tim Tebow. He has yet to play Oaks. Beating him this weekend would really put Boots in the driver's seat. An interesting thing to note is that Bootsy still plays Ted twice down the stretch as well. So if Ted's team really is falling apart, how I mentioned before, is it really that crazy to think that Bootsy could actually win the division? He's only 4 games back right now. Ted has a serious points edge, but it's with plenty of matchups left to go, it's certainly possible that Ted struggles on the stretch and Bootsy passes him up. It should be noted that Ted did basically the same exact thing last year. He raced out to a 7-2 start, but he finished 1-4 and had to settle for a tie for the league title. Getting back to it, Bootsy, I'd say his wild card odds right now are 3-1. Oaks at 10-8. This is probably the biggest weekend of the year for Oaks. He faces a really tough matchup against division-leading Plotzker with Rodgers going on Monday Night Football. And he also goes toe-to-toe with direct wildcard competition Bootsy. 2-0 this weekend could really set up Oaks for wildcard, playoff success, but 0-2 would sort of put him behind the herd. So I would say, at this point, until this weekend goes through, even with Bootsy, wildcard odds for Oaks 3-1. Next up, 9-9, Billy. Billy, he faces a must-win situation this weekend. He's playing his brother and he's playing Kraus. With Bootsy and Oaks playing each other, Billy can gain ground on at least one of them by going 2-0. So, he needs to take care of his own business first. He needs to go 2-0. But depending what else happens, Billy is certainly far from out of it. So I'd say wild card odds for Billy 5-1. Getting to the Drags, 8-10, Kraus. Kraus's wildcard chances they're not quite dead yet. They don't really look that good, though. He plays me, Deutsch, Ben, and Billy in the next 2 weeks. So he might be able to make up some ground if some of the teams ahead of him stumble a little bit. But I'll say wildcard odds 15-1. 9-9 Justin. Justin still trails big time in total points. He got a gift win playing my shitty team this past week. No change to his odds from last week. He does play Bootsy in week 14, so he'll factor into the final standing somehow. It just won't be him winning it. So wildcard odds for Justin 50-1, and then just because we play the game still, I'll throw me and Ben in there 100-1 wildcard odds. All right, wrapping it up. Time to open the old mailbag. First question from John Krause. It's a multi-part question. It's the Krause specialty. Number 1, do you think Ben has an outside chance at clown? That would be great. Number 2, best, worst trades of the year to this point? 3, well, actually, Krause says, best, worst trades of the year to this point. If this is too much work, don't worry about it. Krause, come on, what do you think I'm doing at my job all day? Actually working? Of course, I have time to look up fantasy trades and rate them. Third question, could Ted blow first place in his own division? Have you ever seen a more pathetic fantasy running back situation? All right, so thanks for the multi-part question. All very good ones. I think Ben absolutely has a chance to wear the clown suit. Without question, his team has really fallen apart. Matt Ryan and Deshaun Jackson are just overly shitty. Andre Johnson's injury just has lingered on and has just been ugly for Ben. I feel like it might have affected some of his decision making, and he's sort of feeling like, okay, maybe I'll just get Andre Johnson back this week, and it just keeps, he just keeps missing games. So Ben is, he's only 3 wins ahead of Ariel right now. He does hold a substantial points edge. Ben and Ariel actually play each other in week 14. So let's pray. If they are tied at that point, it would be for the clown suit, which would be fantastic. I think Ben would make for an exceptionally angry and therefore hilarious clown. So it's certainly possible. I wouldn't count on it. I think, Ben hasn't given up on the season. I think he's going to still win enough games to keep his head above water, but certainly possible. Getting to the trades, there's been a lot of trades. Actually, as I was looking through it, it's difficult to rate a best trade and a worst trade because it depends on who you're talking about. But, just on overall and on how the players involved have been affected, I'd say the best trade of the year has to be me acquiring Michael Turner from Deutsch for Colt McCoy and Antonio Brown. I actually have been high on Antonio Brown all year. I went out of my way to make sure that Justin included Antonio Brown in the Sam Bradford trade. I do like him, and he's really turned into a good receiver. However, Colt McCoy is, he's next to worthless. Deutsch gift-wrapped a top 10 fantasy back for me. I don't think there's any one of us that wouldn't have done that trade. Honorable mention, best trade goes to Oaks and Ariel. Hova gave Foster, Romo, and Witten, and Mike Williams to Oaks for A.J. Green, Ryan Matthews, and Matt Castle. Ariel did the right thing. He sort of acknowledged how shitty his team was. He knew that we're in a keeper league, and he's building for next season. So he picked up A.J. Green and Ryan Matthews with the price that was paid for those two guys. The argument that could be made that, those are 2 of the top 5 best keepers in the league right now. So it's, I think a smart trade for him, and also obviously a smart trade by Oaks. He kind of mortgaged his future a little bit, but he's in win now mode, and picking up Romo and Witten, picking up Foster in one deal is a pretty big move. So that was a pretty solid trade for both parties. As far as the worst trade is concerned, there have been some pretty ugly ones. In my mind, the worst one was Ted giving away Antonio Gates and Ryan Fitzpatrick for Vernon Davis and Peyton Hillis. Gates did miss some time with some injury, but really has been back in full force the last 2 weeks. I think he scored 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Vernon Davis has been relatively quiet. He had one big game that sort of padded his stats a little bit, but he hasn't been that good. And Peyton Hillis, Ted just dropped, is beyond worthless, which I know I saw coming. I don't know if everyone saw coming. I know I saw coming at the beginning of the season. Ted didn't need Ryan Fitzpatrick, so it makes sense that he traded him away, but he could have traded him for something better than Hillis and Davis. Could have traded him for a real running back, something that he desperately needed, especially when Fitzpatrick's stock was sort of at an all-time high. Honorable mention for the worst trade is me shipping Steve Smith to Denenberg for Michael Crabtree and 26 fab dollars. I thought I was guaranteeing myself Carson Palmer. Obviously, that's been well documented that I was completely incorrect. So I feel pretty bad about that. I could really use Steve Smith right now. And then to answer your third part, I sort of touched on this in the wild card update. Ted has every chance of blowing his strong division lead. He did the exact same thing last year. So the precedent's been set. He still has a pretty strong core. Obviously, Brady, Newton, Calvin Johnson. But, Brady hasn't been quite the same lately. The last couple of games he hasn't been so hot. He's had some pretty ugly interception games this year, against the Bills especially. and against the Steelers, I believe, as well. Kind of remains to be seen if Calvin Johnson can keep up this pace for the whole season. He obviously started off very strong, but remains to see if he can keep it up. At least in Ted's defense, he has a very large points lead, and with a 4-win gap right now, with about I believe 10 games left to go. I think the worst that could happen really would be a wild card berth for Ted. All right, next question. Twinkle, twinkle, Mr. Bauer. What are your thoughts on a material divisional prize of some kind for the winner of each division? I was thinking the following. Lane Bryant winner, Golden Muumuu. The Schindler division, Bronze Keepa. And the Shame of Sherwood featuring Bob Ross, a blue rubber duck. Thoughts, other ideas? Twinkle, twinkle. Very good, Jason. I actually really love this idea. I was against the trophy. I was very vocally against the trophy. But after seeing that fucking thing in Ben's room, it kind of changed my mind. I want it so bad. So I think a division-winning trope or item or whatever is great. Just like the division names, I think each division should vote on whatever they want. Could be like a beer mug or like a T-shirt or like a Jerry Sandusky fathead or something like that. So thanks for the mailbag questions, Kraus and Plotzker, and good luck this weekend to everyone. Should be an interesting one. It's a great weekend for all the games. There's a lot of great matchups this weekend, so should be a lot of fun.